Dan, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here.
I'm excited to have you on. There's a lot that you're doing that I'm excited about and intrigued, and I can't wait to just pick your brain on it. But before we get into that, listeners already know how I am with interviews. I like to get right into things. I don't want to waste time. So tell me a little bit about your story. How did you get into what you're doing today? How did life lead you to that path?
Yeah, so it's an interesting one. So let's see. I started doing martial arts and was teaching martial arts for a while. I'm a second degree black belt in mixed martial arts. And while doing so, I also started learning how to make websites. And I've always been really interested in technology. What happened was I actually, used to do the MySpace backgrounds, right? And then it led into making the first websites for this martial arts school. And they went from getting like 20 leads to 100 leads, changing the business and really helping more people get involved in martial arts. And I really like that because martial arts changed my life. What happened was I started making one website, one turned into two turned into 20, so on and so forth. And then I found myself, using technology to help people. And I did the whole, hey, I don't need to go to school, and kind of did the techie drop out of high school and go into, other paths. And what I started doing was realizing that I could use that technology to help people. And I went from doing that to helping mom and pop businesses to grow their businesses to more established businesses. And then I found myself several years later as a digital director of a marketing agency and doing sales and all this stuff. And I really optimized for maybe financial success. And I really got away from helping people. And I hit this point where I was like, you know what? Life is short, right? I want to do something that can get back into using technology to help people. Ended up quitting that job to the chagrin of many people around me and looking for companies. And it was something that, I tried Brainfm when I came across it. And I'm very into different kinds of things that can help us be our best self. And I remember trying Brainfm for the first time and taking out my headphones and being like, this is not real. This is all all this stuff, but it's really interesting. So let me explore more. And I started learning more. I kept using it again. I was very in tune with my body. I used to work from 10 p.m. at night to 4 a.m. in the morning. And this is literally the only thing that I've ever tried that at any time I could put it on and dive into that flow state or that deep focus. And it was then after playing and messing with it for a week and actually educating myself on the science that is there, that I was like, I have to work for this company. Called them up 12 times, had to get on a call with the founders, and finally got that call. And I basically said, hey, listen, you have to hire me. I'll work for free and prove that I know what I'm doing. Let's build this. And at that time, I was just so enthralled with this has been tried before, and we can get into the patents and the music and the way this is done later. But it's something that anyone that has a smartphone and headphones can use to be their better self, or their best self, I should say. And I just love that because it doesn't matter, your gender. It doesn't matter how much money you make. It doesn't matter what language you speak. It matters that you're human. And that's what really drove me to, start working for free, start leading the tech team. A few years later, I became CEO. And then a few years later, I actually bought the business. So it's been a wild ride, to say the least. And now we're here on the other side and really creating a foundation for how can we grow consumer business that is profitable, but the more profitable it gets, it can invest in technology. So we actually have neuroscientists that work for us directly, and they figure out how to make the product better, and that makes more people use the product, and then we can invest it back into science. And we do the same thing with enterprise, as well as some medical and R&D stuff that we're working on. But yeah, it's been an exciting run.
What a story, man! From working for free to buying the company. I mean, that's just amazing. I love that story. Very inspirational there. Let's dive in. I know people are probably listening, going, "Okay, what's this Brainfm? What does this consist?" He talked about some music. There's neuroscience. There's this. I love to dive in. I would love to a little more dive. I mean, I've already done my research on it a little bit, but again, I
Yeah.
like to let you do all the talking here. So, tell me a little bit of the basics of what it is, and then we'll take it
Mhm.
from there.
Yeah, so Brainfm, we make functional music designed to help you focus, relax, or sleep better. And what we do is we add different kinds of rhythmic pulses to music that emulate neural patterns that we have in our head when we're in different states or different activities. So when I'm in a focus state, if you put an EEG cap on my head or you look at my blood flow around my brain, it's predictable. It's very similar in the different focus states that you're in. If you compare that to relax or sleep, you're going to get different, brain patterns, right? And what we're doing is we're adding through amplitude modulations, which we're basically changing different bands of frequencies in the music to enable us to add these rhythms. And as you're listening to it, your brain starts matching to these rhythms and it helps you switch into focus, relax, or sleep faster. And then as you're staying listening to the music, it helps you stay there as well. So this has been tried to be done before with like binaural beats or isochronic tones, and you may have heard of those. This is a completely brand new way of doing it. And then we've also, as I mentioned with neuroscience, one of our principles is science first. So we test all of this stuff with EEGs, fMRI, SART tests. To date, we've invested many millions of dollars to be able to do that, to make an effective product, and also to make sure that it works. And we combine all that science that we've talked about, which we can dive in even deeper, with musicians that create this music with intention. And these are, award-winning musicians that we hire that basically make music you want to sound good, but is not too good where it's distracting. So there's a fine line. And then also music that's effective, and has been tested to do so.
Love this. So EEGs, things like that. Is this brainwave technology you're using too? Is that playing a role, or is this something a little different from that?
Let me expand on that. So when you say brainwave, are you saying like sensing the brain or something else?
So like alpha, delta, beta, like for example, like when I'm doing, sometimes I'll share, like if I want to go into a real deep meditation and go deeper than what I normally do, I'll listen to theta brain waves and just get really centered. And within a certain period of time, I'm there. Is that kind of the things that are added into this, or is this a whole different perspective on rhythm beats with the neurology and so forth?
Yeah, great question. So the stuff that you're listening to is probably binaural beats, actually. So it's these, theta is just actually like frequency. It's how fast frequencies are moving. And if you look at the brain, your brain has different frequencies there. So we actually have all different frequencies, right? Between beta to theta and, all of them, right? And it's basically the amplitude of how your brain is working in different areas, right? So what happens with binaural beats when you listen to them, it's the idea of a frequency in this ear, a frequency in this ear, or even another way is just putting frequency in music, right? So it's just turning on and off, right? What happens with that is that has been shown to have some effects, but our brain is really good. It's like the most sophisticated thing on normalizing. So when you drink coffee and when you're 16, you're like, oh my gosh, and now you can drink 3 cups, no problem. You become used to things. And a really great example is when a truck backs up, beep, beep, beep. 30 minutes later, you don't even hear it anymore. But when it stops, you notice. And it's because our brain has evolved to basically protect us from danger. And when we have large bangs and things like that, which you call salience, it's an alert mechanism. So what's happening with binaural beats and these different kinds of tones, they may have appreciating effects in the beginning, but it's not necessarily an effect that has been measured to improve focus. It's just an effect, right? The real thing that you want to look at in neuroscience is an effect that is sustained, but then also can be shown has great results from it. So this is kind of what you're already doing. And then what we've done is gone a step further, and we add these different kinds of patterns within that. So if you want focus, we're actually not just giving you, theta or something like that. We're altering all the bands of frequencies. So what's happening is when you're listening to the music, your brain, all the different areas, we're actually aligning into a certain pattern. So it's kind of like your Christmas tree of your brain is blinking all different areas. When you listen to our music, we're aligning those to blink at the same time. And this is through a process called entrainment, which our brains and our bodies naturally do. Does that make sense?
No, that makes perfect sense to me. I've been very involved with like entrainment and brainwave entrainment and other things like that, and how it activating certain parts of the brain and how certain things could do a certain way. So I know my listeners have heard me talk a little bit about this before. That's why I wanted to bring that question up, just so you did a great job of differentiating between the two, so that way they understand a little more in depth. How does this then, through the stuff, I love getting into neuroscience. I'm a chiropractor that's my day job, and I'm very heavy into that. But I'm just curious, how does this affect, when it comes to the brain, when it comes from focus versus, or let me take a step back. Do you mind sharing some of the technology, like when you talk about fMRIs, right? Just sharing what that is really quick so the listeners know, and ECGs, just let them, we'll go from the baseline there and then we'll take it up in that notch from there.
Yeah, for sure. So let's kind of really break it down, and I'll go from low to high, and we can kind of then place in between. So, really, one of our missions, again, is the science first, right? And to me, what that means is basically making sure that things work, right? So that it's not like, a lot of people come in and they're like, well, is this placebo? Is this something else? Like, how do you decipher if this vitamin I'm taking is actually affecting me, right? And, one thing that I think is very important is us doing that ourselves, because that enables us to make a better product, which is a good business decision. And it's also something, I want to use this for me, right? So what we do to start is really, let's say focus. We have National Science Foundation grants for our focus music to investigate it. And really what we're doing when we're validating this is saying, okay, in it, we have this thing, we have this theory, right? Let's create a controlled group study to be able to evaluate and make sure that it's real. So, some of the things that you do in that is having blind, things. So having, in our studies, for example, you have Brainfm compared to Brainfm without our technology. So the same exact music without amplitude modulations and things like that. We also compare it to binaural beats. We also compare it to like Spotify, music, and then like white, pink, brown noise, all that stuff, right? What we're doing is we're doing it across the spectrum. So we know that, how we can rate the effectiveness. So what's happening is people listen to this different music and they actually do these really boring video games or these very simple tests that are the gold standard in psychology called SART tests. And they basically, numbers flash on a screen and you have to react, and it measures reaction time, et cetera, et cetera. And we can show that through that SART test that someone listening to Brainfm scores a much higher score than they do without the core technology applied to our music and without all of these other things. And when we really break it down, it's part of this patented amplitude modulation that we're able to do, which I'll go into in a second. But there's also all these other rules that your listener and yourself are probably very aware of. So if you're ever listening to like music with lyrics and trying to work, it's kind of hard. And it's because our brain is trying to like block out and not listen to the music. And even if you can do that, it's taking energy, and you may find yourself a little bit more tired after doing that. And then there's other things like salience, which I mentioned. And there's basically all these rule sets that we follow to be able to make sure that the music is effective. So, we do this with different kinds of tests. And what's unique about our company is we do this testing in laboratories and different kinds of partnerships like Northeastern and a few other universities. But we also do this large scale testing online as well. And we do this with thousands and thousands of individuals to be able to validate that this is actually effective. So we do both of these. And when we are in a lab setting, this is where we can do EEG and fMRI, where basically an EEG is you put a skull cap on your head that has all these electrodes, and it's measuring the electrical activity inside of your brain. So have you ever heard of like a Muse headband and things like that? That's kind of like what those are doing, but these are scientific and really, really precise instruments. And we're able to see, how your brain lights up when you look at a picture of a dog, or when you're trying to work and you're listening to Brainfm versus other music. And then there's things like fMRI, and basically that's a big magnetic thing that spins around your brain really fast and super loud, but it allows us to slice your brain into different sections and actually measure blood flow across different time periods. And then when we're doing that and we're seeing this, we can see you in a resting state, right? Maybe similar where if I put an EEG on my head right now, you would be able to see. And then as I'm listening to Brainfm and doing an activity, you can see that my brain starts switching in there faster through blood flow, through these electrical impulses. And then we're able to measure that, again, compared to all other different mediums that we're putting up. And this is not, us go renting a lab and doing it ourselves. This is working with, people that are tenured professors. So, that's really, our starting point. And then, from there to expand on it, is we're using similar technology that is really cutting edge. And that's why we employ neuroscientists, because again, what we want to do, like a lot of companies, what happens is like neuroscience makes a breakthrough, and then 6 years later, a company is formed. And we believe that by employing neuroscience directly, there's a breakthrough. We put it immediately into our company, immediately to the consumer. And the same kind of stuff that is shown to be effective that we have patents on, MIT just released a study to show that this has things that they can reverse Alzheimer's in mice. And they just finished a clinical, or I think it's a preclinical trial. They have a paper coming out to show that there's strong effects that this may be able to reduce Alzheimer's in humans. It's the same technology. It's not for focus, so you can't listen to focus music and have the same effects. It's something different, but it's this technology that is going to enable things like that. So obviously lots of science here. We can kind of go higher level, but we really pride ourselves on our approach and making sure this is effective. So a user can come in and say, I want to use focus, and it actually works. And then you keep going on.
No, I like that. I like the science first approach. I mean, a lot of times, the way we live in the world, we do something and then we back up science. We get the science later, and you guys are kind of doing the mix of the two, but you're like, hey, we're going to figure out this science. Once we do, and we get something new here, we're putting it right in, get going, and then continue that R&D as we continue to move forward.
100%.
And I'm a big science guy. That's what I like to, doing things a certain way, a certain process, and make sure we get those results. They're reproducible. We can continue to see it. And so I commend you guys for that detailed work, because I mean, it pays off, and the company is doing amazing. So, but I appreciate that from my end, because it's one of the things where a lot of times it's like, from a health side, from a nutrition side, it's always like, here's new research shows this does that. So then everyone just blankets it across the board. And I'm always like, how do you know that works for sure? It's just saying one state, it's an umbrella, but then there's a lot of things underneath you got to look at. And you guys get all through the fluff and get right into the nuts and bolts of everything. So I love that. So when it comes to Brainfm, you got, just to recap, is it focus, sleep, and then is there anything else that you guys are doing, or is it those are the main two? I thought there was something else.
Yeah, so we have focus, relax, and sleep. Inside of focus, we kind of split it up into different categories of like learning or deep work or creativity. Inside of relax, we're like, kind of like chill or downstate. And then meditation is in there. And then sleep is like power naps as well as deep sleep.
I love that. Now, I know that the body has been broken down into frequencies and all sorts. And even from a neurological perspective, they've broken down the frequencies of the brain to know what is an optimal frequency in certain areas and not. Does the work and everything you guys do, does that play a role? Does that connect to like this frequency is going to affect this part of the brain, which can lead to this type versus this type? Or like when you're doing focus, you have the different categories in it. How's that all work?
Yeah. So, there is this, so there's, yes, is the short answer. The longer answer is there's a lot of science in there. And it's interesting because in different areas of the brain, it's not necessarily like, what we're trying to make, your prefrontal cortex this frequency and this other part of your, your brain's already doing that. And what we're doing is we're actually kind of enabling your brain to do it faster. Because if you look at the music and through processes of entrainment and things like that, what's happening is you get the syncing effect, right? So I mentioned this before with like Christmas trees. So imagine a Christmas tree of your brain's blinking all different times. And as you're listening to the music, your brain, which is super sophisticated and can do this already, starts syncing and then organizing itself based on you getting into focus or relax or sleep. So what I like to say is, like, for most people, and there's some people with like, different kinds of sleep conditions or something like that. But let's say, for focus or even sleep, I guess it's all the same, is that everyone can focus. Everyone can sleep, right? Everyone can relax, right? But if I say, hey, Victor, relax right now, right? Like it's hard for us to do that. And then, because of all these different kinds of, the nervous system, the parasympathetic versus, like all these different things, sometimes we can't control consciously our body to do these. And sometimes we get lucky. And that's usually kind of what people are doing to find great creativity. I've talked to people and they're like, yeah, you wake up, you have 3 cups of coffee, you go run a mile, and then I sit down and I work, right? And it's kind of like, again, helping that. But what we're trying to do is really give someone a focus switch in their pocket, a relax switch in their pocket, to be able to switch into that state and then stay there. And I kind of think of it as like a runner. So if you're running, anyone can run. But if we put a wind on your back, it just feels so much easier and you feel like you can run further. And that's what Brainfm is. So, we've gone into the science, but I really think that Brainfm fully is really a tool that, and if you use it and know how to use it effectively, it lets you switch your state, and being able to have a habit of being able to jump into deep work, or being able to have a habit of, it's time for me to have great meditation. I'm going to dive in and turn it on. And instead of some meditation sessions being okay and some being amazing, you're going to have maybe more that are towards the amazing spectrum because we're pushing you in that direction. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense to me. Is it kind of like unlocking your potential in a sense to make those shifts? So like, for example, like you were saying, I love the runner analogy. I'm thinking when you were talking about running, I was thinking like when you run downhill, right?
Yeah.
So much easier, right? You go like, wow,
Yeah.
look at the stride I got. I can really go now. And this is what Brainfm is really designed. Cause like, if you got to go, for me, like I love using things where some days I have big, heavy mental focus days where I just got to be very mental.
Yep.
And other days are physical, but it's one of the things where it's like, I try to use a variety of stuff to make sure I can get as deep as I can in that state so I can do that. Is this like helping people like, show them best selves, be able to unlock that potential? Does it relate to that and so forth?
Yeah, totally. So I really think that this is one of the things or one of the tools you can use to set yourself up to really discover what that is. So, almost like training wheels, even like we have some people that, use their, they know all the ways, they know how to like organize their week. They know how to set focus blocks. They know how to do these things. But there's so many other things that affect that: our diet, our sleep, our, all this other things. And what we're trying to do is help people get a positive outcome, when, instead of dissecting their whole life, they can just kind of switch into it. And I think through that, you can really discover, your best self on demand, right? Which is, if you can unlock that focus state consistently, then you can organize your life around it and be more effective. I used to work from 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. because I found that that's when I could do double the amount of work. And then I came and started using Brainfm, and now I can proudly say that I wake up for the first time ever at 7 a.m. every morning. I usually drink some iced coffee, sit down at my computer, and from 9 a.m. onwards, I am effective. And it's, that's something that has literally changed my life. And, what's cool about this is people that have that story it works for them. But then there's other people that have no problem waking up in the morning. But after lunch, it's really hard to get back into work, or they have kids running around and they're trying to focus at home, and this creates like almost like a bubble, for you, because one of the coolest ways to control their environment is through sound. And with noise canceling headphones and all these other things, we're able to fully have, controlling our sound and escape some of that stuff. But now you're able to escape some, control your environment, and help push your brain in the right direction. And we believe that this is kind of another added element to that, that if you build a healthy habit around, can really help you, discover what your true potential is.
I love that. Now, do headphones play a role in this? I love when you brought that up, because I know like with certain brain entrainments, they're always like, make sure you have headphones is the best effects. With Brainfm, do you need to have headphones? Can you just listen into the background and noise? How's that all work?
Yeah, so with different kinds of frequencies and things like that, it depends on the speed of the mental state, right? This is exact science, but it's easier for you to, I think, visualize. So think about focus, where you're like using a lot of brain energy, right? If you look at the modulations that we're adding to music, it's very, very fast, right? And if you don't have headphones on, those frequencies are bouncing around objects in the room before they interact with your ear. And for best results, you should be using headphones. Now, you can still get effects with high fidelity speakers, but for focus, why would you have anything less than 100% effectiveness? Now, what's interesting though about relax and sleep is actually that because they're longer waves of these rhythms, it actually doesn't necessarily matter. You're going to have best effects always with headphones, but with sleep, I can't use headphones. Like, it doesn't really work. So I put it on like a Bluetooth speaker myself, and I have the same effects as that because of those slow, longer waves. And it just makes sense where you're trying to get your brain to like calm down and go to sleep, as opposed to, so in most cases, turn up, into focus. And then, there's, interestingly enough, some people that their brain is too wired and they need to come down, and listening to focus music actually helps them come down a little bit into the peak zone of not being too energized or maybe even too stressed, you could call it, and still being motivated to get things done.
Have you done with any of your studies with sleep, analyzing like listening to your sleep stuff with Brainfm and paying attention to like the deep sleep versus REM, things like that, maybe heart rate variability analysis? Do you guys do any of that stuff when you're using music for sleep?
Yeah, so we've done the most science and research in our focus music. We're actually doing a lot in our relaxed music now with some of the medical trials that we're doing with hospitals, which is interesting. Our sleep music, we have done studies on. We haven't done HRV and some of those kinds of studies. Sleep studies are by far the most expensive and challenging to do, because you need to get studies of many people sleeping, and it's 8 hours versus 30 or 60 minutes. But one of the interesting things that we did see was that we actually increased slow wave sleep by increasing spindle activity in your brain. And for users that don't know what that is, basically you have REM sleep, and there's this other form of sleep, which is slow wave. And they believe that that's part of the time when your spinal column or your brainstem like collapses to add more fluid into your brain to like clean out all of the junk that your brain uses when you're focusing or just awake, actually. It's kind of like the garbage collector. And when we age, our slow wave sleep degrades over time, which affects memory retention or mental, what's the right word for it? Degradation or something, right? When, getting older, right? And by listening to different kinds of things like we've discovered in Brainfm, preliminary, it looks like we can help affect that. Interestingly enough, coupled with the stuff that we're seeing from MIT and some other researchers in Alzheimer's, is very exciting. But that's something on the roadmap for us to discover and really look into, is helping people sleep and the brain around that.
That'd be huge. I mean, that's excuse me. That'd be that sounds very promising. And I was only thinking because I use something like called Aura Ring, where I track all the time, and I used to use something else years ago. Unfortunately, they were way ahead of their time. It was called Zeo Sleep. And you had like this little band you wore at night, and it was off brainwave activity, and it was one of the most accurate ever. And I got it pulled away, and then one day I interviewed the innovator, the scientist for Chili Pad or the Euler system, and she was talking about what she uses, and I was like, "What do you use? I need to know." And she's like, "I don't get paid," but she's like, "I use the Aura Ring. It's about 90% accurate." And I was like, "Okay, that's the highest I've seen on the markets." So I've been doing it, but I was just thinking of that because like that's something I do at night. I try to figure out how can I get the most max amount of sleep in the shortest period of time, where I'm still getting if I get 2 hours of deep sleep in a 6 hour period, that's absolutely phenomenal. And then how do I get my, working on my REM to get up to that realm. So my goal is always like 50-60% of deep sleep and REM in my night, so I don't have so much light sleep. Because I really believe we're on the premise of unlocking that. And I think the stuff you're doing, I think that would also play a huge role too, because I think we're at the point where we're going to start, and I think it's going to be the next 10, 15 years for what I'm feeling, that we're not going to be sleeping as much because we can use things to just get us to what we have to do and then get the restore button on things and then get back to work on it, get up and be revived and have, no negative health effects from it.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of interesting things that we're still discovering about our brain. Our neuroscientist, he tells me this. He's like, we know more about Pluto than we know about certain parts of our brain, right? On memory retention and different kinds of things. And, it's really, really exciting to play a point in that. And, it's really exciting that there's an interest. This is the only reason we exist and we can invest in science is because people use our products and they know, it works for them and they want to continue this path that we're on together. And it's exciting because, I want this, you want this, right? It's cool to see that the whole kind of like population is shifting into where Aura Ring, a lot of people have them. I actually have mine. It's charging right now. So there's a lot of stuff there.
I think that's where, tech is where it's helping us in that movement. And I think more data points, the better. And then if you, like I said, your stuff, if that can definitely, I know sound and music has shown a difference for me. It's not as consistent because just like anything else, there's things like, how was my diet? What was my day like? Certain things that, may override it, but it's using all that you can to get that support, to get that sleep, because I truly, there's like you were just saying, sleep alone, if you activate REM, that really helps activate the brain because as you get older, you get less REM, where children have 50% of their sleep when they're young that's their REM. And that is what allows the brain to stay young and activity and all that. So to be able to access that for us to keep our brains younger and sharper, I think that's pioneering in many different ways. And being a chiropractor, that's what we do all day long is how do we keep the brain younger? How do we, like you were talking about how the brain will detox and get all that congestion just from the mental, from the sympathetic side of things. When we fire that up, it creates a lot of, what's the word? Not congestion. I'm just going to use that in the brain. But, one of the things we as chiropractors is the sacrum actually has the pump to detox the brain and clean it out. And so if you ever look at someone who has Alzheimer's, you ever look at someone who has like Parkinson's or these neurodegenerative diseases, you will always notice pelvis doesn't move well. The sacrum in that area is locked up. So it can't pump as well as it should. I found a couple of years ago, we saw some research on this and I was like, wow, that's fascinating. This is a game changer. I need to adjust this more often then to make sure it's freely moving. But you sharing what you share piqued a massive interest in me, because then it's like, how can I dump that even more? Right? How can we get that to clear out more so that way we're keeping the brain as young and as active as we possibly can?
Yeah, I think you bring up a really interesting thing, and really is health. Brain health is not just brain, right? Health is not just eating healthy food. It's the 360 wellness of being able to take care of everything. You're literally blowing my mind knowing that, your pelvis is doing that with, I'm going to have to look at those studies. But that's really what I think these devices and these different kinds of things are finally going to help us unlock, is the ability to realize, wow, if I combine plus, 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 then I equal this. And what's really interesting too, this might be a diversion, but we've actually, like, we're studying the brain on maybe normalized individuals, but there's also people on two different spectrums of, you have people that have like ADHD, for example. You have people with Asperger's or autism, right? And it's not necessarily one or the other. It's a circle, and neurodiversity, right? And what's interesting is, even though the brains of humans have very specific, base functions, we all are unique as well. And I think what's really, really cool, and I'm really excited about, is being able to understand all these different parts of the brain and then find personalization for you. And what do you need? And what does your body need? And what are all these things? And, that's one of the reasons why I get up every single day, is how can I enable, you to be the best person you can be? And I believe, again, Brainfm is not the magic bullet, but we're definitely, we have like 2 million users. We're growing, and we're a part of that. And it really makes me proud to be able to say, we're helping people, and we want to continue helping people, and combining it with things that you do and all these other things. It's really exciting.
And I think when we take, this is why health, and I won't get on this box, this is a totally different subject, but like healthcare in America,
Sure.
because it's so singular, it's a failing system. And it's not my opinion. I have medical doctors in my office who will say the same thing. And it's one of the things where we have to shift to that holistic approach, right? What's all the things? Have an open mind to look at all things, and then take every segment of that. And that's how we can really maximize everything. So, I'm excited. I'm going to be checking this out. I love it. So real quick, before we wrap up, how can people connect? How can they find the app, everything that you're doing, and all the good stuff that Brainfm is doing and so forth?
Sure. So we have a website. You can go to brain.fm, or you can go on the app stores and search for Brainfm as well. And what happens is we actually give everyone 3 days free, no credit card at all. You can go in and try it out. I always recommend people to, try out for work first, because it's probably the fastest thing that you can find results on. But if you listening and you're like, I am a powerhouse at work, I don't need that, but I maybe need relax or sleep, feel free to try that too. And yeah, let us know. You can reach out to customer support. If you need help with anything, we're very good at, learning more about you and giving you some more tips and tricks on how to get the best out of the service.
I love it, Dan. I appreciate the work you're doing, man. What an amazing story. And look what you're doing now, and taking this to a whole new level, being the pioneer on this when it comes to the brain and the sound and all the other stuff that you're implementing in. I look forward to sitting back and watching how this grows and continues. And any way I can support, please let me know. But I look forward to it. I'll be checking it out myself. And thanks for taking time to share with the audience here at the Mindful Experiment.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.